A row of jets lined the runway like steel statues under the Nevada sun. Among them sat one pilot no one really noticed, not even when she entered the briefing room. Samantha Lee, 34, quiet and unreadable, took her seat as if she belonged, though most around her didn't think she did. Moments later, that same woman would pull off a flight maneuver so dangerous and complex that even AI simulations had written it off as impossible. No one saw it coming. Not her commanding officer, not the billion-dollar defense contractors in the VIP gallery, and definitely not the two men who had sabotaged her aircraft hours earlier. They expected her to fail. They wanted her to fail. But Samantha had spent a lifetime preparing for the moment no one believed she could survive. And when it came, she didn't just survive it, she rewrote the boundaries of human flight. What happened in the sky that day didn't just change her career. It challenged every assumption the Phantom Squadron had about skill gender and who truly deserves to lead. At 34, Samantha Lee looked nothing like the stereotype of a military test pilot. She was slim, composed, and always impeccably put together. Her flight suit fit perfectly, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she believed that details mattered. Her dark hair was always tied back tightly, and her eyes carried a stillness that unnerved people who mistook quiet for weakness. She hadn't always belonged in this world of roaring engines and rigid formations. Before flying, Samantha was an aerospace engineer. Her name appeared on white papers about AI-assisted aerial maneuvering long before she ever climbed into a cockpit. She didn't start flying because she needed a thrill. She did it because someone once told her she couldn't. That someone was a recruiter 6 years ago who laughed when she mentioned applying to flight school. He told her she was better suited for simulators. She never forgot his face. But the truth went even deeper than that. Samantha had dreamed of flying since she was a child. She remembered standing beside her father at an air show, both of them holding corn dogs. Both of them looking up as a squadron sliced the sky. You could fly those someday if you wanted. He told her, his voice gentle but firm. She looked up at him and nodded. I will. He died when she was 14, and she never said those words out loud again. But she carried them with her into every classroom, every lab, and eventually into every cockpit. And when she finally earned her wings, no one clapped. No ceremony. Just paperwork and orders. That was fine with her. The sky didn't care about applause. It was the silence before takeoff that reminded her of her father. That steady breath, the hum of something larger than herself, the belief that you don't need to be seen to make history. The Nevada test facility was everything people imagined when they pictured military prestige. Gleaming glass towers rose behind endless rows of asphalt guarded by stern faces and blinking security gates. Even the sunlight seemed to respect the order here, casting clean shadows over the hangars and satellite domes. Inside the Phantom Squadron's operations building, the atmosphere was sharper than the desert heat. The walls held plaques and medals from missions classified beyond most people's clearance. Pilots moved like they were in a dance, every step choreographed, every nod timed. They were men who had trained together for years, who wore swagger like part of their uniform. Samantha stood out without trying. She wasn't loud, she didn't demand space. And that somehow irritated people more. She was new, but not rookie silent, but not submissive. She'd been in the squadron for over a year, yet the space around her felt unchanged. Tight, but distant, full of tension never spoken. Never. Her presence disrupted a rhythm. Her success in simulators didn't match their stories in the sky. She didn't drink with them, didn't laugh at their jokes about new recruits or boast about close calls like they did. When promotions came and her name stayed off the shortlist, no one seemed surprised except maybe Samantha, who had long since stopped expecting fairness. What made it worse wasn't open hostility. It was the small things, the looks that passed between them in the break room, the silence when she entered, the way someone always seemed to have already taken the last chair or the last mug when she showed up for morning briefings. She didn't complain. She never raised her voice. But that didn't mean she didn't notice. She simply folded the moments away like origami, sharp, compact, and quietly dangerous. They never said it out loud, but it was clear. Samantha wasn't one of them. The seat assigned to her was always just slightly farther away from the cluster. During prep, someone moved her helmet. Later, she found it behind the water cooler with a pink ribbon taped to the visor. It was the kind of prank that wasn't funny. Childish, designed not to humiliate her, but to make her presence feel like a joke. When she pulled the ribbon off, no one looked her way. They just kept talking, as if the act had disappeared into thin air. In another setting, maybe it could have been shrugged off. But not here. Not in a place where respect was currency and perception was everything. These men didn't need to yell to draw boundaries. Their silence did the work for them. One morning as she reached for her coffee, Lieutenant Harrow bumped her elbow just enough to spill hot liquid across her printed flight sequence charts. "Oops," he said flatly, like the word didn't carry an ounce of apology. "Guess you'll have to memorize those now." "Already did," she answered, blotting the paper with a napkin. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just turned and left. No one followed. No one laughed either. These weren't accidents. They were rehearsed acts of exclusion, a slow, deliberate chipping away of her space. They didn't want her to quit. They just wanted her to always feel like she was on the outside looking in. She ran her systems check 3 times. Each time, the response parameters didn't feel right. At first, Samantha thought maybe it was her nerves. Maybe she was reading too much into small fluctuations. But on the 4th check, it became undeniable. Someone had tampered with her aircraft. It wasn't obvious. The basic diagnostics showed green across the board. But the thrust-to-drift ratios were too smooth on paper, and the control response lagged by 1/10 of a second, just enough to make her look unsteady during high-precision maneuvers. The sabotage was smart. It wouldn't trigger any alerts. It would only show up during live flight, especially in the final sequence, the vertical climb. The one that had to be executed perfectly in front of top military officials, defense contractors, and the Secretary of Defense himself. She could report it. She could pull out of the demo. That was protocol. But deep down, she knew how it would play out. There'd be an investigation, sure, but the narrative would already be set. That Samantha Lee backed out because she couldn't handle the pressure. No one would say sabotage. They'd say stress. Instead, she walked out to her aircraft early and manually disabled the AI-assisted controls. The system blinked warnings at her like a nervous assistant, but she overrode them all. She would fly the Phantom manually. Every inch, every angle, every drift. Chief Mechanic Elena Rivera climbed up the ladder beside her, curious. "You've been running extra tests." "Is something wrong?" Samantha didn't answer right away. Then she said it softly. "The vertical climb parameters have been modified. I don't know who. No time to fix it." "We can ground the jet," Rivera said immediately. "Safety protocol demands it." "That's what they want," Samantha replied. "If I don't fly, the mission fails. They win." Rivera's face hardened. "You're flying without assistance, I am. And I can." Rivera didn't argue. She just placed a hand on the edge of the canopy and said, "Then watch your 6 up there." The moment she committed to manual flight, Samantha knew there was no turning back. This wasn't a simulator. There was no restart button. She would have milliseconds to respond at supersonic speed, and the G-forces would try to rip her consciousness away. But she didn't hesitate. She'd spent years in that cockpit, not just flying, but studying it. She knew every sound it made, every quiver in the frame, every heartbeat of the engine. She trusted herself more than she trusted any algorithm. As she strapped in, the others walked past, laughing, casually tapping their helmets, confident their jets would carry them like always. No one noticed Samantha already inside, going over every control surface by hand. This wasn't about being the best pilot. It was about protecting the integrity of the Phantom project, about proving that talent didn't wear a specific face or walk a certain way. She wasn't here to make a point. She was here to fly. The countdown started. 5 jets, 5 engines roaring to life. The vibration traveled through her spine like a drumbeat. She closed her eyes briefly, felt the old memory of her father's voice echo inside her. Just fly. She wasn't angry. She wasn't afraid. She was focused. The kind of focus that comes not from arrogance but from practice, from repetition so deep it becomes part of your breath. Samantha had flown this sequence 2,000 times in modified simulations, more than any pilot on the tarmac. The comms crackled. All systems check. One by one voices responded. Then hers. Talon 3. Systems nominal. Ready for takeoff. A long pause. She imagined Jackson's eyes narrowing. "Maintain formation integrity," he said. "We have a full house today." Samantha gripped the stick. No assist. No margin for error. Just the sky, the pressure, and everything she believed in pressing down on her shoulders. Then came the order, phantoms rolling. And with that, they took off. The jets surged down the runway as one. Samantha felt the brute force lift her into the sky, her back pinned hard against the seat. The G-forces were immediate, unforgiving, but her hands stayed steady. No AI, no autopilot, just her instincts and the machine. At 15,000 feet, the squadron entered formation. From the ground, they looked like sharpened silver blades cutting through the morning sky. Cameras tracked every movement. VIPs whispered into headsets. Reporters scribbled notes they couldn't quite believe. Jackson's voice came through. First sequence. Delta formation. Rolling brake on my mark. The jets shifted cleanly. Samantha matched them breath for breath, adjusting manually with every change in air pressure. She knew her movements looked smooth. What no one saw were her fingers constantly nudging, correcting. No pilot had ever flown the Talon X by hand at this speed before. Not during a demo. Not ever. The formation broke, then snapped back into an arrowhead pattern. Looking good, phantoms. Samantha exhaled through her nose. Her body was already starting to feel the strain, but this was only the warm-up. The real test was seconds away. Prepare for vertical climb. Every muscle in her body tensed. This was the moment her sabotaged parameters had been designed to ruin. Any instability during vertical thrust would spin her off formation and into humiliation, or worse. She heard Jackson call the count. 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. They pulled up hard, almost vertical. The G-force punched her gut, tried to crush her spine into the seat. She blinked fast to clear the black spots creeping in from the edges. Her hands trembled, but they held the line. Her jet began to drift, just slightly, not because of error, but because the turbulence was stronger than forecast. Phantom 3. You're drifting. Samantha didn't answer right away. She knew what came next. If she admitted anything, she'd be ordered to abort. Instead, her voice stayed calm. Assistance compromised. Switching to manual control. Silence. Then Jackson again clipped, furious. Abort. Now. That's an order. She didn't listen. She banked away sharply, shockingly off path, but not off plan. The entire VIP deck gasped. One jet breaking formation wasn't just unexpected. It was dangerous, reckless, insane. What is she doing? A gray-haired man stood slowly at the edge of the observation deck. His voice was almost a whisper. She's attempting the phantom shift. Gasps followed. Even engineers from the aircraft manufacturer looked stunned. Impossible, one of them muttered. No pilot stays conscious through that. But she was still flying. Inside her cockpit, Samantha didn't hear the chaos. She heard the shift in air current, the thunder of her engines, the warning beeps she chose to ignore. She felt the roll of turbulence not as resistance, but as rhythm. She moved with it, not against it. She let her jet slide sideways for a breath, then caught the slipstream like a surfer catching a wave. Her timing was perfect. Her control, absolute. She had rehearsed this moment more times than she could count. Her heart pounded, but her movements were fluid, smooth. No hesitation. Below, the spectators watched in silence as the impossible unfolded above them. Samantha didn't just rejoin formation. She slid into her position with such grace it looked like choreography, like the breakaway had never happened. Jackson's voice came on again. This time it held something else. Chen. How did you just... Flying the bird, sir. No swagger. No boast. Just fact. From the stands, the Secretary of Defense stood and clapped, once stunned. On the flight deck, no one moved. Inside her cockpit, Samantha smiled for the first time that day. She had flown with no net, and she hadn't just landed safely. She had soared. On the observation deck, the applause came slowly at first, just a few claps. Then it rolled across the crowd like thunder. Not one person had expected what they saw. The jet that had broken formation had not failed. It had performed something every expert there had said was physically impossible. Admiral Thomas Hayes turned to the man beside him. "What the hell did I just witness?" The gray-haired man, Dr. Elliot Miles, didn't answer right away. He was still staring at the sky where Samantha had rejoined the squadron. Then he finally spoke almost in awe. "You witnessed the phantom shift. And the only person who ever modeled it successfully was one of my grad students at MIT, Samantha Lee." Hayes narrowed his eyes. "She's a pilot. She was the lead theoretical designer for this maneuver. She's not just flying the jet. She helped invent the physics behind it." People around them looked stunned. The head of engineering from the jet's manufacturer stepped forward, still shaking his head. "We ran the numbers 100 times. Our system rejected it, said no human could handle the G-loads. And yet Miles replied, she just did." On the flight deck, Samantha's canopy opened. Ground crew rushed forward. Cameras turned. But she moved calmly, climbing down the ladder with soaked gear and a steady expression. She didn't look triumphant. She looked like someone who had done exactly what she planned to do. Her commanding officer, Jackson, walked up to meet her. "That maneuver isn't in any flight manual," he said. "No, sir," Samantha replied. "But it's in the Phantom program's theoretical files. Section 5.7. Jackson paused. "Those files are restricted. Only program architects and top clearance pilots have access. I was one of them, before I transferred. Dr. Miles was my advisor." Jackson didn't speak. He just looked at her. And for the first time since she'd joined the squadron, something in his eyes changed. Not suspicion, not doubt, respect. The celebration didn't last long. Within minutes, Chief Rivera stepped onto the flight line holding Samantha's diagnostic tablet. Her face was grim. "Commander, you need to see this." Jackson took the tablet, scanning the report. His jaw tightened. Someone had manually altered the aircraft's flight control parameters that morning. Not a glitch, not a system error. It was deliberate. Whoever did this didn't just risk her life. They risked the entire program. He turned to the squad. His voice was steady but cold. "Who accessed Talon 3 this morning?" Silence. Then a voice broke it. "Sir, it was me." Everyone turned to Lieutenant Colin Marsh. His voice was quiet, his posture rigid. "I changed the parameters. I didn't think she'd actually fly manually." Jackson's expression didn't shift. Why Marsh looked at the ground. "She doesn't belong here. You know it. Everyone knows it. She's smart, sure, but she's not one of us. These jets aren't built for someone like her." "Someone like her? You mean a woman?" Marsh didn't answer. Jackson stepped forward. "You tried to sabotage a demonstration flight. You could have killed her. You could have brought down this entire project. She wasn't supposed to make it through the climb," Marsh muttered. "But she did," Jackson said flatly. "And now you're done. Report to my office. You're grounded pending formal charges." Before Marsh could move, another voice spoke. "I knew about it, sir. I didn't help, but I didn't stop him." All eyes turned to Lieutenant Briggs. Jackson stared at them both. "Anyone else?" Silence. He turned back to the squad. "Let me make one thing clear. What Samantha Lee did today wasn't just flying. It was leadership. If anyone has a problem with that, you can walk now. You won't be missed." Then he turned to Samantha. And for the first time, he addressed her. Not as a burden, not as a question mark, but as an equal. "Lieutenant Commander, I was wrong about you. You've earned this place. And a lot more." 6 months later, the ready room of Phantom Squadron looked nothing like it had before. The atmosphere had shifted. Not completely relaxed, this was still the military, but the undercurrent of tension was gone. Conversations flowed more naturally. Respect didn't have to be earned twice as hard for half the credit. At the front of the room, Samantha stood beside a new digital display showing the Talon X Mark II schematics. She was no longer just part of the team. She was leading it. Today's focus is neural interface calibration. We're switching default control to advisory mode. Human pilot intuition gets priority. The room chuckled. A few pilots exchanged nods. This wasn't how briefings used to sound, but no one missed the old ways. Among the pilots sat Jessica Okafor, new recruit, second female pilot in Phantom history. Samantha had personally reviewed her simulator logs. The girl had raw talent and nerves of steel. She fit right in. When the briefing ended, the pilots stood gathering their notes, but there was no rush to leave. Someone asked a follow-up. Another cracked a joke. The mood was steady, functional, healthy. Lieutenant Briggs was gone, reassigned quietly. So was Marsh. Official reasons never disclosed. Unofficially, everyone knew what had happened. What mattered now wasn't revenge. It was progress. On the wall, a new emblem hung proudly, a stylized spiral symbol of the Phantom Shift. It was more than just a logo. It was a reminder that this squadron had once doubted someone, and that someone had changed everything. Later that afternoon, back in her office, Samantha reviewed simulation telemetry when someone knocked on the door. "Come in," she called. Chief Rivera stepped in, holding a small brown package. "Delivery for you. From Dr. Miles." Samantha took it, carefully peeled back the tape. Inside was a framed photo and a handwritten note. The photo showed a younger version of herself, maybe 9 or 10, standing beside Dr. Miles at an air show. Her face lit up, eyes wide with wonder, a model jet in her hand. The note read, "You've surpassed even what she inspired in you. Your father would be proud." Samantha smiled. It was quiet, genuine. She placed the photo on her desk next to her mission journal. Then she opened her locker where her flight suit hung. The sleeve now carried the Phantom Shift emblem embroidered just last month. She touched it lightly. Outside, her team was preparing for another afternoon test. Jets gleamed silver under the sun engines waiting. Lieutenant Okafor waved from across the hangar. Hawkins gave her a nod. "Ready to push some boundaries?" Commander Samantha nodded back. Always. As she slipped on her helmet and walked toward her aircraft, the air felt different. Like the sky was no longer something to fight for. It was hers now. Fully. And for anyone still watching, still judging from afar, she didn't need to say much. Her silence had always been enough. But if they asked, maybe one day she'd tell them, "You judged me by my uniform, but you should have looked at my flight path."